Story 1. The Enigmatic Neighbor. It was an ordinary day in my quiet suburban neighborhood when I first noticed the arrival of our new neighbor. The house next door, which had been vacant for years, had finally found a resident, a mysterious woman who had recently moved from Russia. Her arrival sent a ripple of curiosity through the neighborhood, but little did we know that her presence would soon plunge us into a twisted tale of secrets, intrigue, and impending horror. Her name was Yelena, a woman of striking beauty and an air of enigma that clung to her like a shroud. From the moment she moved in, she kept to herself, rarely venturing outside her home. Her windows were always tightly shut, and the garden, though once well tended, now grew wild and unkempt. I, like many of my neighbors, couldn't help but be drawn to the mystery that surrounded Yelena. I soon began to watch her house from behind the curtains of my own, trying to catch a glimpse of her or glean some insight into her life. One evening, as I was peering through my window, I noticed a soft glow emanating from Yelena's living room. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to venture over, introducing myself and perhaps breaking the ice. When I knocked on the door, there was a long pause before it creaked open. Yelena stood before me, her piercing green eyes searching my face with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. We exchanged pleasantries, and I offered my assistance in getting settled in our tight-knit neighborhood. Yelena's response was cryptic, filled with vague allusions to her past in Russia and her desire for solitude. As the weeks passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Yelena's house held secrets, that the soft glow from her living room concealed something sinister. The more I watched her, the more I became convinced that there was something deeply amiss. One night, unable to contain my curiosity any longer, I decided to investigate. Under the cover of darkness, I sneaked into her backyard and peered through the window. What I saw sent a wave of terror coursing through my veins. In the center of the living room stood an altar, adorned with strange symbols and candles. Yelena knelt before it, her eyes vacant, and her voice murmuring incantations in a language I couldn't understand. My blood ran cold as I realized that Yelena's rituals were far from ordinary. They were dark and otherworldly, a sinister concoction of mysticism and malevolence. The next day, I decided to share my discovery with a few of my closest neighbors. We were united by a shared sense of dread, a collective fear of what Yelena might be hiding behind the walls of her home. As we conducted our investigation, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. We uncovered stories of missing pets, strange occurrences, and neighbors who had crossed paths with Yelena, only to experience a sudden and inexplicable deterioration in their health. The evidence was inconclusive, but the collective unease in the neighborhood continued to grow. Yelena's presence had become a haunting shadow that cast a pall over our once idyllic community. One evening, as a group of us stood before Yelena's house contemplating our next move, we were met with an unexpected revelation. The windows of her home were aglow with an eerie crimson light, and the ground beneath us trembled as if in response to some unseen force. As we watched in horror, Yelena's house began to shift and contort, as if it were being pulled into some otherworldly realm. A gaping portal emerged before our eyes, and the ground trembled with a deafening roar. Our horror reached a crescendo as shadowy figures began to pour forth from the portal, their forms grotesque and inhuman. It was as if Yelena's rituals had torn open a gateway to a realm of unspeakable horror. We fled from the nightmarish scene, but the haunting cries of the otherworldly entities continued to echo in our ears. We knew that our quiet neighborhood had been forever changed, that the enigmatic neighbor from Russia had brought with her a terror beyond comprehension. As I recount this tale, I know that we will never forget the enigmatic neighbor who moved from Russia. Her presence had brought horror and chaos to our once peaceful neighborhood, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most sinister secrets are hidden behind the most enigmatic facades. Two, the smiling neighbors. When a new family moved in next door, my sleepy suburban neighborhood brimmed with excitement. The arrival of fresh faces was usually a cause for celebration, but these newcomers were different. They were a family of three: mother, father, and young daughter, all with perpetually beaming smiles that never seemed to fade. Nobody knew their names or where they came from, and as the days passed, their presence began to cast an eerie shadow over our once peaceful community. The first time I saw them, they were unpacking their belongings from a moving van, their smiles so unnaturally wide that they appeared frozen on their faces. The family moved with an uncanny synchronicity, their movements robotic, their gazes fixated on the ground before them. It was as if they were bound by some unknown force, unable to look away from the path that lay ahead. I couldn't help but feel a shiver of unease as I watched them from behind my curtains. I had never seen anyone smile so continuously, so unnaturally, and it filled me with a sense of foreboding. As days turned into weeks, our neighborhood's curiosity transformed into concern. The family's behavior became increasingly strange. They rarely left their home, and when they did, it was with their heads tilted at an unnerving angle, their smiles never faltering. It was as if they were trapped in a nightmarish pantomime, performing the same eerie act over and over. My neighbors and I attempted to strike up conversations with the family, but their responses were always cryptic and filled with references to an idealized, utopian existence. It was clear that something was deeply amiss, and we couldn't help but fear the dark undercurrent that lurked beneath those perpetual smiles. One evening, as I watched the family from my window, I noticed something unusual in their backyard. A series of deep, freshly dug holes littered the ground, and as I squinted, I could see that they were shaped like shallow graves. My unease turned to horror as I realized that these were not ordinary holes, but a sinister spectacle, a cryptic message that I couldn't decipher. My neighbors and I decided to share our discoveries with one another, and as we compared notes, a chilling pattern emerged. We had all seen the same graves, and we knew that it was only a matter of time before the family's sinister intentions would be revealed. Fear gripped our community, and we felt powerless in the face of the smiling neighbors. It was as if their presence held us in a suffocating grip, their relentless smiles a source of unending terror. The day the young daughter, who had always been a silent presence in the family, began to approach the neighborhood children, our dread reached a fever pitch. She was accompanied by her mother and father, who watched with those unsettling smiles as she interacted with the kids. Their faces never wavered, and their eyes seemed devoid of emotion. The children who had ventured too close to the family soon exhibited a disturbing change in behavior. They adopted the same robotic movements, and their expressions became frozen in unnatural smiles. It was as if the family's sinister influence had seeped into their souls, forever altering them. As our community descended into chaos, my neighbors and I realized that we had to act. We gathered in secret, determined to confront the smiling neighbors and uncover the dark truth behind their facade. One fateful night, we approached their home driven by fear and a sense of desperation. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows over the family's lawn. The scene was set for a confrontation that would reveal the terrifying secrets that lay hidden behind those inscrutable smiles. As we stood before their front door, we couldn't ignore the chilling sensation that enveloped us. We knocked, our hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. The door creaked open, and the family stood before us, their smiles as unwavering as ever. What followed was a nightmarish encounter that would forever haunt our memories. The family's movements were mechanical, and their words filled with references to an idealized world that existed only in their minds. They spoke of a reality in which smiling was the ultimate salvation, and we, the doubters, were the lost souls. As they beckoned us into their home, we stepped into a nightmarish realm, a place filled with macabre art and eerie, grinning masks that lined the walls. It was as if we had entered a twisted carnival of horrors, and the family's smiles had become a sinister performance. We knew that we had to escape, but the family's hold on us was unrelenting. They trapped us in a room filled with mirrors, and as we gazed upon our reflections, our smiles began to stretch and contort, transforming us into grotesque, grinning figures. In that moment, we realized the horrifying truth. The smiling neighbors were not simply a family, but the harbingers of a malevolent force. Story: The Haunting in the Woods. The forest always held an air of mystery, but on this particular Friday the 13th, it seemed as if the trees whispered secrets to anyone who dared to listen. As my two friends and I ventured into the heart of those ancient woods, little did we know that we were embarking on an adventure that would forever change our lives. It had started like any other day, with the promise of a memorable adventure. My friends, Sarah and Alex and I, had grown up together, sharing a fascination with the woods that surrounded our small town. The stories of strange occurrences and spectral sightings that had been woven into the forest's legend only fueled our curiosity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows among the trees, we entered the forest. The air grew cool, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets of times long past. We followed a winding trail, surrounded by the ancient giants that had borne witness to countless events. With every step, the forest seemed to close in around us, as if it held us in its grasp. Shadows danced among the trees, and the silence was punctuated by the sound of rustling leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. It wasn't long before we stumbled upon an old, overgrown path. Though our instincts warned us to turn back, curiosity got the better of us. We followed the path deeper into the forest, where the trees seemed to grow denser, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers. The whispers in the woods grew more pronounced, as if the forest itself were speaking to us. It beckoned us further into its depths, and we couldn't resist the eerie pull. We soon came upon a clearing where a gnarled ancient oak tree stood. Its roots protruded from the earth, creating a tangle of gnarled appendages that seemed to form a sinister face. Its bark twisted into an expression of malevolence. The clearing was bathed in a silvery moonlight, and in the center stood a forgotten well, a relic of a time long past. We gathered around it, drawn by its eerie presence. As we peered into the well's depths, a strange and unsettling sensation washed over us. Our reflections seemed distorted, our faces shifting as if they belonged to different times and places. The air grew heavy with foreboding, and a sense of unease settled in the pit of our stomachs. Sarah was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling as she spoke of the forest's strange pull. I agreed, and Alex nodded reluctantly, his eyes reflecting our shared trepidation. As we attempted to leave the clearing, we discovered that the path had disappeared. Panic set in as we realized that the forest had swallowed us whole, and our efforts to retrace our steps led only to an endless maze of trees. Time seemed to lose all meaning as we wandered deeper into the woods. The eerie stillness was broken by the sound of our own footsteps, and the dense fog that had descended around us left us disoriented. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched by unseen eyes, and the forest's whispers became a chorus of haunting voices, their words indecipherable yet laden, with an ominous weight. It was then that we encountered a spectral figure, a cloaked and ethereal being that seemed to emerge from the very heart of the forest. Its eyes were empty voids, and its presence sent shivers down our spines. The entity beckoned to us, its bony finger pointing deeper into the woods. As fear constricted our hearts, we realized that we had no choice but to follow. The path grew increasingly treacherous, and the night seemed to stretch on endlessly. Our ordeal had transformed the forest into a malevolent entity, a realm where time and space lost their meaning. Just when we thought we were lost forever, a brilliant light filled the forest, and the oppressive darkness was banished. We stumbled out of the woods, shaken and horrified by what we had experienced. As we returned home, the memory of that chilling adventure continued to haunt us, a reminder that some mysteries should remain unsolved. The forest had shown us its malevolent side, leaving us with a sense of foreboding that would linger long after the events of that ominous Friday the 13th.